black metal has always been about the feeling and the reasons for making it, and the spiritual condition that surrounds it. It's not a commercially viable music on any large scale.
Hi, I'm Vlad Bresnix. Welcome to the BresnixCast, episode number 62. And I was joined this time by the US black metal band Anicon. Really good show. I think you're going to enjoy it. Anicon are touring pretty much now as we speak in November in Europe. So keep an eye out. They're going all over the place and you're definitely going to want to go and see them live. I think you'll really enjoy it. So before we get started, let's hear some Anicon. So from their latest album, Entropy Mantra, this is Names Written in Tar. So I am here with Owen Rundquist from Anicon. Owen, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me.
So I've just been kind of made aware of Anicon recently. So for any of our listeners that might not be aware of You're the Band, why don't you tell us a bit about yourselves and how you've got going?
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. Anicon started as just a kind of a home recording project with myself and our other guitarist Nolan Voss. We met kind of randomly at a friend's going away party here in New York, and I had just started playing with another band. He was a musician. He had lived in New York for a few years and hadn't really found anybody that he clicked with musically, and we kind of hit it off. And so, over the course of the next month or two, I don't even think it was that long, but like maybe a few weeks, I sent him some riffs. He showed me some stuff he had online, and I was like, yeah, I can play this stuff. So we got together and kind of just immediately started recording stuff and kind of structuring riffs into songs, and that's what became the first Anicon EP. That was in I think that was in like the winter of 2010, so maybe it was early 2011, and it was kind of a project that we just get together when we could. So it took a long time to get that first EP out, and then once that came out, we fleshed out the band with a couple guys that were already good friends of ours and accomplished musicians. Lev Weinstein playing drums, and Alex DiMaria playing bass. And that's been the lineup ever since. We played our first show in I think December of 2012, and we put out. I don't know. So we tend to put something out every year. We put out 2 full lengths. We just put out the most recent one earlier this summer, Entropy Mantra, and so that's what we'll be touring on in Europe next month in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I noticed that, and we'll get there. So, would you class yourself as being like, say, a black metal band? Because, when I listen to Anicon, I hear the black metal, influences in it and stuff like that. But, I also hear other influences from different types of metal and stuff like that. Also, even sometimes there's this kind of... It's a kind of like punk influence in your songs, like at the start of a song like Toll and Mockery, so
Yeah, totally.
I feel like you sort of got like, quite a broad, like, what should I say, like a broad sort of range of influences that you're working with. But how would you class yourself really?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I don't know. We most commonly get referred to as a black metal band, and I think that is what we take the most influence from. I would not say that we're trying to play into that style. I don't. When we're writing, we're not very concerned with like the taxonomy of what we're doing. We write the music that we write, and people can kind of digest that and call it what they want to call it. But yeah, that's very astute. Yeah, and Toil and Mockery definitely is a very, very kind of punky intro. Probably the punkiest thing we've ever done. But yeah, we draw on a lot of influences, and we're all 4 of us contribute and have different interests in music. So I think that kind of comes through, and really the point of what we do is just to try and make the best songs that we can, so they go where they go. And I don't know, you call them whatever you want.
And see, I speak to some American metal bands, but it's largely European metal bands I speak to, And is there any kind of black metal scene in New York? Because you're from New York, aren't you?
Yeah. I live in Brooklyn. Nolan lives in Brooklyn. Lev lives in Queens. Alex lives upstate now, but regardless, there's a scene for this music here. I mean, I think there are a lot of bands, that have come out of here recently in recent years, the past 10 years anyway, that are of a higher profile. It's not, there's a metal scene in New York, and then there are people that are involved in different kind of subgenres within that, and there's a lot of bleed over, So yeah, there is a scene here, but I would. It's not like there are just there's just the black metal scene or something. It's a metal scene at large, and there are people working within the black metal genre inside of that.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, I just think it's funny because, like, just from talking to, Americans who are into black metal, it's like it's the same but different in a lot of ways. It's the only really way I can put it between the sort of American and European sort of black metal scenes.
Yeah, well, and I think that the music definitely appeals to a specific kind of person, with a specific interest in music. And so I often find when I go to more underground black metal shows, there are people that I will see at those shows that would not be at, I don't know, I can't think of what show I went to most recently, but like more of a death metal show or something. There's definitely people that are drawn more to one style than another, but then there's also kind of the scene at large of just rotating characters that play music and are at shows and are in a variety of bands and stuff like that. It's kind of, I guess it's kind of an amorphous thing, Yeah. It's a community.
Yeah, aye. That makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. And what I've noticed as well is, like, over your career, you've done quite a few splits with a lot of other bands, haven't you?
Yeah, a few. I'm trying to think. We did one with Bellis from here in New York. We did one with Unsacred from Richmond, Virginia. Did one with Forest of Tigers from Nashville. I think that's it, right? That's all the splits. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, those are all just friends bands, that we've met through touring, or Bellis is a 3-piece band from here in Brooklyn, kind of a blackened doom band, for lack of a better description. But they're all three of them are close friends of ours. So they've just been things that kind of came up at the right time. Like we had some material we weren't sure what to do with or whatever, and somebody got a hold of us, a friend, and asked if we wanted to do something. So we did.
Yeah, cool. And I mean, like, you do see it quite a bit in electronic music these days, but I remember you used to see it more in, like, kind of punk music, people doing splits and that. I don't see it. There's certain genres I don't see it much in, but I do see a lot of splits going on, particularly these days in electronic music. That seems to be really quite big just now.
Huh, really? I'm not that up on electronic music, I have to be honest about that, but yeah, I guess it is kind of more of like a punk ethos, in a way. And I don't know. I mean, I have a few splits by metal bands, but usually, yeah, split LPs or something like that. I mean, I don't know if it's something that we would go back to doing again at this point. I think that just for the way that we're writing and the way we're thinking about music now, we prefer to, be able to kind of like really see an idea through from start to finish. And I think it takes more than what you can do on like half of a 7-inch or half of a 12-inch or something. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's something we used to do more of.
Yeah, and so, like, your newest album is Entropy Mantra, and for me it's possibly your most brutal album. And what's interesting about it is, like, the songs are played at such a furious pace, but they're not short songs, like, not like some of these bands where it's like it's over in a minute. Like, I don't think any of them are under really 6 minutes or something like that, but you do manage to keep the listener engaged with it. So tell us more about the album.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I would agree. I think that it's kind of our most direct, brutal, if you want to call it that, album. And I think that that's just had to do with like a refining of ideas and styles in the music. But like I was saying, it's always just a matter of making the songs kind of the best thing that they can and finding the way to make the compositions interesting. And I think that's how we think about songs, so we're not like a verse, chorus, verse kind of band. Yeah, I don't know, it's like one part follows the other and they kind of have to just go where they go. And we try and keep from making sprawling directionless songs, but, yeah, for better or for worse, that's just ended up kind of the pace that we play at and how we structure things.
And are you like the main songwriter, or is it more like a kind of, at this point, is it more a kind of group effort?
It's a fairly democratic process when we're putting things together, but each song will have somebody starts a song. Basically, we'll bring something in, an idea that's more or less fleshed out, but usually something from start to finish. That maybe needs one or two things added, or needs some editing, needs some things taken out, and then everybody will write their parts to it, depending on how specific the accompanying parts are in the kind of originator's head. So I would say that we probably do. I would say I probably write about 40% of the songs. Nolan probably writes 40%, and Alex, our bassist, writes about 20%. And then, I mean, of course, Lev writes all of his drum parts. Though Nolan and I will sometimes come in, Nolan more often than me, with kind of rough drum ideas that he'd like set to it, and Lev will work off of that.
So, see, Lev, your drummer, how much crystal meth is he on? Because, I mean, if that's not sped up post-production, that's insane.
Oh, no, absolutely not. No, it's all, there are no triggers, no, I don't even know, no quantizing anything, none of that. That's all his actual playing. He's an absolute maniac, and he is really seriously committed to his drumming, and he plays every single day. He teaches, and that's what he does for a living. So he's in our practice space, his drum studio, every single day, as far as I know, for the majority of the day. And so if he's not teaching or in practice with one of his many bands, he's kind of woodshedding and working on stuff. It's not uncommon at all for me to show up at practice, and he's just there listening to a metronome in his headphones and doing foot exercises or something like that.
Yeah, because that is one of the things that does stand out in the album. I mean, the drumming, particularly on Entropy Mantra, it's just stunning, basically, you know what I mean? That's why I was wondering, I was like, is this been sped up post-production, or is this actually possible, because it is something that really, really strikes you when you hear the album.
Yeah, he's an incredible drummer. We're lucky to have him. He's a great addition to the band.
Oh, no, definitely. And I noticed as well, like, through all your releases, the art that you always put out, like your sort of album art, it's always kind of abstract,
Yeah.
And I quite like it. Is that kind of on purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. We try not to clutter up the album covers with text. I think we put out a couple of the splits have text, but all of our own solo releases are just images, and that's kind of, the band has changed, and the ideas have changed since we first started playing together 8 years ago or whatever now. But just the idea behind the name of the band, and the art, and even originally the lyrics, were about kind of an inability to define things. And so, yeah, we visually artistically, we try and kind of walk a line between representation and abstraction with the art. Playing with ambiguity in the images.
And what is the idea behind the name of the band? Because you alluded to it there.
Yeah, sure. Anicon is like a shortening of Aniconism, which is it's a concept like the practice of eschewing visual representation, and it comes up a lot in Islam. It's like a religious concept, but it's in that religion specifically, how you're not allowed to visually represent what is it, Allah or the Prophet Muhammad. I'm not Islamic, but the idea, I think, is interesting, and just the idea that there are things that cannot be sufficiently represented by one mode of expression, like through visual representation. So you know, we're expressing these ideas that are meant to be experienced audibly. Yeah, so that's kind of where the basis for the name of the band comes from.
That's quite interesting. And where do you kind of see the sound of the band going in the future?
That's a good question. We've started writing some new stuff since the album came out, and I think, yeah, it's hard to say. I think you know, the last couple of songs on the album, or the last songs that were written for it, just coincidentally, but I think maybe those allude to some of the ideas, excuse me, that are coming up in this new writing. I think there's some more technical things in there, some more leaning into like kind of death metal writing. There's some more dissonance. There's I think there's kind of just some more open space and more dynamic stuff going on in those songs, and so that's kind of the direction I see us going, or the direction that I see my writing going. And given what other people have been bringing into practice, I think that yeah, a darker sound, a more aggressive sound. I think that's kind of what you can expect on the next album, whenever that happens.
I take it there's no sort of like concrete plans for when the next album will be.
No, I mean, there's no date for it, you know. The next album will come out when we get enough songs written, basically, and when we're happy with a grouping of songs, you know. I don't know. It was a couple of years between Exegeses and Entropy Mantra, and I would expect, well, it'll probably be about the same for the next one, but there's no deadline on it for us.
As musicians, do you guys all kind of play in other bands, or just some of you?
We all do at this point. Yeah, Lev, who we were talking about earlier, is kind of the most active out of any of us. Our drummer, he plays in Woe, Kralis, Pyrolatris, and Gurion. Those are all active bands, and then he has other projects that, you know, he does session work with. Like he did the Zeal and Ardor tour, when the U.S. tour that they did. He'll do studio work. He plays with a lot of people. Nolan also plays in Pyrolatris with Lev and some other guys, friends of ours. Alex plays with Yellow Eyes, who we'll be doing the Euro tour with. And he's also got a new project coming up that I don't want to say too much about that. They don't have a name yet, but it's with some other guys from here. I play in a band called Trench Grinder that is not especially active right now, and then have also just started playing with a band called Ruin Lust here. So yeah, so we're all pretty busy in the music scene here.
It sounds like it. It sounds exhausting, actually. Just thinking of it.
It's a lot of work. Yeah, I mean, and it definitely, it can just be like a logistical nightmare trying to schedule a tour, you know, because everybody is so busy with everything else. But we got to do a lot as a result, you know. Yeah,
you've got to do what you want to do, you know. That's what people like to talk about. The overnight success, but then they don't. It's really the 10-year overnight success, because they forget about all the, you know, all that led up to it. If you know
it's a lot of everything. It's just work, you know, and it's not. I don't know. I think if you're playing music for success, you're probably not playing black metal or underground metal. You're looking into the wrong kind of music if you're looking for accolades and, you know, financial success.
See, that idea has come up, like, actually in my last couple of shows, you know, because I was talking to Hyperion from Sweden, and they were saying, like, you know, that they're not bothered when the next album comes out. It'll be out when it's ready. You know, they would rather than like chase the money or the fame, they would rather like produce great art, you know. And it was the same. I was talking to Nine, the lead singer of Wormwood, also Swedish, and like he was saying pretty much, the same thing about how, like he said, if you want to make money and be famous, then you're not making black metal. And that's one of the reasons why I've always been such a big black metal fan, because I have felt the authenticity, because, I mean, you can tell people, aren't doing this to be on, like television and the radio,
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I don't know either of those guys personally, but I think everybody involved in this knows that, we all know this about this music, and that's not what draws you to it. It's not what drives you to make it. I definitely, with that said, there are definitely trends within the music, and bands can kind of explode playing up to some of those trends, but that's a different matter altogether. But yeah, at its core, black metal has always been about the feeling and the reasons for making it, and the spiritual condition that surrounds it. It's not a commercially viable music on any large scale, and nor should it be.
But see, why that's broadly true, then how do we address the Cradle of Filth problem?
Well, I would not consider Cradle of Filth a black metal band to begin with, but regardless, I mean, that's semantics. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I guess, that band has been around since the 90s, them, Dimmu Borgir, and some other bands, that have become enormously commercially successful. And I don't know. I mean, it's like anything, I guess. If you're a smart person and you know how to market, maybe you can find a way to make that work. But I think that to do that has to be your goal. That has to be what's driving you to do it ultimately. And that's, I don't think there is any famous band out there within any style that didn't decide at some point, we want to be famous, and made choices to push them in that direction, both stylistically, aesthetically, and whatever else, business dealings. So yes, I guess, like I said, at its core, black metal is not a commercially viable music. Obviously, there are bands that are an exception to that rule, but I think that those bands also, it's not an accident that they've become commercially viable. They made very calculated choices to make that happen.
So, see if we think of, take the Cradle of Filth example, because that's, they're arguably the most, successful black metal band out there.
Yeah.
Some of their early albums, like Vampire and that, actually were, fairly decent. They weren't terrible, but then the more they went on, the worse it got, the more embarrassing it got. I call it hammer horror black metal.
Yes.
It just with the hackneyed lines, and it got really kind of like, B-movie sort of soundtrack, and and like you said, and I think that's kind of where you're coming from. They've made the decision to go in this kind of less extreme way, and they've made these decisions to market themselves in a certain way, create controversy in a certain way, and that's ultimately they've chosen the way they've gone.
Yeah, I mean. They've kind of ascribed to a pop sensibility, and I mean, I'm saying this. I haven't listened to a Cradle of Filth album in probably like 20 years, but
you're not missing anything.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not surprised by that, but obviously it's a conscious choice, and I can't speak to what their motivations are for making music, or anyone's but my own, but. Obviously, they started out much younger and were interested in some style of music and started playing it, and then found maybe their heart was somewhere else, and their drive was to do something else. And that's the direction that their music has gone. So, I mean, whatever, that's their choice. It really doesn't have anything to do with me.
And it's interesting because see, when we brought them up, you said, for a start, that you wouldn't consider them to be a black metal band. So what for you disqualifies them from, say, the black metal label?
I think, well, you were touching on it. You were talking about like kind of the camp and the like almost the horror film, um, kind of aesthetic and I guess basically I see that band as and bands like that as a caricature of really the heart of what makes this music, and so I don't. I don't know, like 80s satanic panic kind of pseudo Satanism or something like that, and like an interest in horror films and saying, like I don't, for me, that is not what black metal is about. Black metal is about a feeling and a spiritual condition and a pursuit of that. And I just don't think that's I don't find that pursuit or the embrace of that to be authentic within that music, and so that disqualifies them from being called black metal in my mind.
Yeah, I even think the aesthetics are wrong, because they would have all, like Cradle of Filth I'm talking about, would have all these daft aesthetics like half-naked nuns and all this kind of nonsense. But when you look at most like black metal bands and their imagery, it's usually like fully clothed people in forests and things like that, which I think is much more true to, what they're talking about, rather than all these stupid kind of semi-pornographic, like let's rile up the Christians sort of. And I think that's a whole plan as well. It's a whole kind of let's create as much controversy as we can.
Right. Yeah. I mean, imagery is powerful, and it also can have a lot of meanings. And when you're dealing with something like nuns or something, that's a really iconic image. And so it's so broad, it can mean a lot of things. And so, I guess I don't want to go down that so much, but, all of those things, I don't see sexuality as being antithetical to, black metal. I mean,
it's just usually I'm thinking of the European stuff where it's always snowing and you're not going to be half naked in the snow. You'll die.
Right. But I also see, I see snow as being like snow and mountains and stuff like that has become synonymous or analogous with black metal because of, the Scandinavian black metal scene, Norwegian black metal, and because it's cold there and it's snowy. And I think that when I see American bands, like say, I don't know, like a band from Arizona or something, posing in a forest or something, it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. It's, I think that is more about an embracing about your own personal environment and becoming attuned to it. And, there's obviously there's also a long heritage of, forests in like Scandic mythologies, it's like a magical place in that mythology. And so and
here too.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Like any Northern European country or Western European country, you have folklore and mysticism and things like that assign mystical properties to the forest, and I think that holds true in America to some degree as well. There's like a romanticism about the forest here, because these are the environments that we live in. And I think that is really more what that aesthetic is about. It's not really about the cold of snow, I guess that gets talked about, but it's really more about environment and being attuned and having an understanding of where you are and where you come from, what you are effectively.
See, well, that's really interesting, because like I know what you mean about like like an Arizona band trying to pose like on a snow-capped mountain.
Yeah.
And I had on recently Black Sigil, and he's from California, and he makes black metal, but he doesn't try and be anything other than what he is. You know what I mean? he takes this name that I can't remember pronouncing. It's a kind of Mexican sort of name, Actuala, whatever. It's on the website, but like, you know, his sound is quite authentic because you can tell he's not trying to imitate any kind of European black metal.
Yeah.
You know, and even these days, like, black metal is spread out so much that British black metal and Scandinavian black metal, now you can hear a difference in it. You know, you can hear that it's kind of like, you know, there is a kind of separation of it. And the amazing thing as well is black metal is all over the world now. You know, you're hearing about it in places like Iran and stuff like this, you know, and it's become massive in Russia as well for probably obvious reasons. So like, it's one of those things where it's fascinating how like, how it has developed that way.
Yeah. And it makes sense, you know, it at this point, you know, is a style of music that's been around 30 years, 35 years, something like that. So, it makes sense that there's regional styles, you know, within the music. And I think that there's still, I'm glad to see, you know, like a lot of, earlier on, when I was first discovering, this music, black metal, in, you know, like the late 90s. I came to it a little bit later than some people. You know, there was a magic about it for me. It was literally magic to me, and it was a special thing. And you know, I was younger then, and it was harder to understand what that magic was, to pick out, because it was just so foreign to me, so unique, and so singular, that it was kind of hard to understand how to interface with it, and what my role in that could be effectively, you know, and how I could contribute something. And I think, as time goes on, maybe, you know, unfortunately, music has lost some of its potency. You know, like there's definitely a very specific period of time, for this music that I think of, and like that is kind of the magic stuff for me, you know. And the other stuff I understand as music, played by people, even though obviously all of it is music played by people. But I hear it as such. I don't hear it as this singular thing. But I do think it's a cool thing that, you know, people have had enough time to digest it and understand it, that, I don't know, it is not a stagnant genre, I guess maybe is what I'm getting to, is that, you know, people in different places interpret it and filter it through their own personal or cultural lens and expose a different facet of it. And I think that's a cool thing. That's an exciting thing.
Yeah, so like I came to black metal, it would have been in the 90s when I was younger, and I used to read Kerrang magazine.
Oh yeah.
And they had the black metal, the infamous black metal edition.
I remember,
you know,
that, yeah.
Then it was the whole sensationalized thing about, you know, Varg and the church burnings and the murder and all the rest of it. And I think what really had struck me at the time was, I mean, like, there was a few things that struck me at the time. You know, I'd listened to, like, you know, Marilyn Manson and Alice Cooper, and, you know, could tell that was an act that they were putting on. That was, you know, that was a character that they were playing. But these guys not only looked dead, but, you know, they were actually enacting, you know, the sort of inherent sort of evil and horror within the songs, you know, and it was like the most authentic thing. You know, it's like they weren't playing these characters.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think that gets, yeah, exactly. I think that's what I was trying to say, or part of what I was saying about that music being magical to me, and literally changing my life. You know, you know, I got into like thrash metal and stuff like that, when I was a kid, you know, in the like early 90s or even late 80s, but, and then went through a long period of being interested in like punk music and grindcore and stuff like that. And then I found this music, and not only was it just more more expansive and more complex emotionally and sonically, you know, but the people involved in it were really committed to it, and there's an authenticity to it that you know, I was becoming kind of dissatisfied with, especially in like punk and crust music and stuff like that. And it's like, well, yeah, there's like all this espousing of ideology and lifestyle and stuff, and like, well, the lifestyle that I see is just like being a dirty fuck and being a drunk loser, you know, and like that's not, I don't see you affecting any world change here, you know, or it like pretty typical behavioral patterns and social roles and gender roles and whatever else. It's just, you're just kind of a burnout, you know, and that is not of interest to me. It wasn't of interest to me then, and it felt disingenuous. Whereas, yeah, those, like you were saying, the whole initial controversy, you know, not initial controversy, but yeah, the Kerrang issue, the like when Lords of Chaos came out and all that, it was like, well, this music is really, really serious, and the people doing it really mean it, and that authenticity and that conviction was part of the appeal to me about it. And that's part of, you know, that comes back to what we were talking about with bands like Cradle of Filth. It's like there is music, there's you know, there's a sound, there's an aesthetic, there's a proficiency that you have to play this music, but there's also a level of conviction and heart that you have to play this music. And if you don't have that, you won't be playing this music, you know?
And have you ever seen the documentary Until the Light Takes Us?
Yeah, I watched that.
Yeah, I've talked about it a bit on the show, but I'm just interested to get your take on it because we're getting quite into black metal. I thought it was a fascinating documentary as well, and the thing that really stood out for me personally was the juxtaposition, you know, between, you know, Varg and Fenriz, you know, whereas, you know, Varg was obsessed with, you know, politics, and that's basically all he talked about, whereas with Fenriz, it was basically all only music he talked about. Yeah. And, you know, these guys were about at the same time, but just to see the juxtaposition and what they were actually, you know, interested in, what their main fascination was, I thought was really fascinating. Yeah.
Well, I mean, first I have to say, it was like 8 years ago. You know, I watched that shortly after it came out, and I haven't seen it since. But what I remember liking most about it was all like the kind of archival footage of stuff. But yeah, I mean, obviously those two guys are highly influential people. I mean, you know, their influence in the music can't really be overstated. But I mean, that makes sense, right? They're individuals. They're different people. They have different interests. You know, it's not like I wouldn't expect that every musician within the initial Norwegian black metal scene would be like a monolithic face, you know, that all had the same ideas.
Totally. And let's get back to you for a minute. So you're going to be very, very shortly actually touring Europe. So tell us about that.
Yeah, that'll be cool. It's our first time in Europe. I'm excited about that. Just as a person that's been playing music, you know, since the 90s, this is my first time ever touring in Europe. So for me personally, it's a big deal, and I'm very excited about it. But I'm excited to take this music over there. We're all, I think, very, very happy and proud of Entropy Mantra. I'm looking forward to playing that stuff out and playing it to new people and going to some places I've never been. I've been to a few of the cities that we're playing, a few of the countries, but there's definitely, you know, territory that I never probably ever expected to go to. I guess Slovakia specifically. I'm like, yeah, that's fucking awesome that we're playing there.
Aye, but you're not coming to Scotland.
No, I wish we were. Yeah. We will be in the UK, but yeah, we're not making it that far north.
I think it's Manchester's as close as you're getting to.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Manchester. If you can make it, please do. But we'll be touring with Yellow Eyes, who I mentioned earlier, our bassist, plays in that band as well, so he'll be doing double duty. It's their, I think it's like their fourth European tour or something. They've been hitting it pretty hard the last few years and have had a lot of success with their recent albums. But yeah, I think we're all pretty excited for it. We leave in, I think it's like 12 days. We fly out and are over there. So everything's booked and we're looking forward to it.
That's great. What we'll do is we'll publish your tour dates on the website so that people can see them, so that awesome, they can catch you.
Yeah, thank you. Be awesome.
Is there anything else going on with the band, going on with yourself, that we should mention that we haven't talked about?
Well, like I said, Anicon is just starting to write again. You know, I think we'll get back from this tour and kind of buckle down and start working on the new album. I know we were talking the other day. As I mentioned earlier, our drummer Lev plays in 5 different bands here in New York, and last December 2017, we played a show in kind of celebration of that. It's just a promoter here, a local promoter in front of ours, had been teasing us basically. You know, every time we'd see him out, he'd give us a hard time and be like, "I'm going to book this Levapalooza show and you know, have all of Lev's bands play the same show." And it actually happened, and so all 5 bands played, and we rotated every single song. And Lev just stayed behind his kit he played for like 2.5 hours straight. And so we're talking about doing that again. I think it'll be maybe March of next year. But otherwise, you know, really the European tour is kind of the biggest thing on the horizon for us. And then we've all got other projects going on that I think are going to start playing out next year. So that's kind of been a focus, is getting those things in shape.
I would recommend everyone check out your new album, Entropy Mantra. And I would just like to thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
Hey, yeah, thank you for having me. It's been fun. It's fun to talk about this stuff. I don't get to do it that often.
So my thanks again to Owen for coming on the show. Check out their stuff if you haven't already. And if you're about anywhere they're touring in Europe, definitely make sure you go out and see them. You will enjoy yourself. So that is it for another episode of the show. Thank you for listening. The website, BresnixCast.com. Follow me on Twitter, @VladimirBresnix. I have a YouTube. Gonna just subscribe to it and watch stuff on it, because I could really do with the views on YouTube. Everyone just seems to get everything through the RSS feed. So yes, I do have a YouTube. My album is out. You can find it on all your favourite digital streaming platforms. Just search Vladimir Bresnix and you will find me. So let's finish with some Anicon. So from Entropy Mantra again, this is Paling Terrain.